exciting talk today with uh, two great two great experts on college tennis. I'm going to introduce them first of all. We've Dave Mullins, ex-Irish international tennis player, uh, top coach in the States, top player, and vast experience working for the ITA now. And we also have Mark Finnegan, who was also an Irish international, and Mark also was a good top coach. I'm not sure who was a better coach, maybe who did better. Maybe they can fight that between themselves today. But loads of experience as a player and as a coach, and also loads of experience on the whole recruitment side now, which he's been very successful at. So really excited to hear the talk and hear more about college tennis. But just a few things before I pass it on to them. We now have certs, so anybody who watches the whole webinar gets a cert sent to them saying they completed the webinar. And we've teamed up with the USPTA, and anybody from the USPTA now gets CPD credits for the course, and we're going to look to add on more coach and federations onto the webinar soon. Also, for those who are new here, we have a podcast, the Function Tennis Podcast. Google us, give it a listen, some great chats. We had a great chat with Dave, so if you want to find out more about him afterwards, you can check that episode out. And that's it. If anybody's on Instagram, just give us a share on stories, tag us, and we'll repost it. But let's get to business now, and I'm going to pass you straight on to David.
All right. Well, Fabio, thanks so much for having myself and Mark on and shining a light on college tennis. Obviously, myself and Mark are pretty passionate about this. I don't know that we're going to get into our coaching backgrounds a whole lot, but yeah, coming from Ireland, such a small tennis country, it's pretty cool that myself and Mark have coached at the highest levels of college tennis, but now are involved in some other ways. So I am the managing director at the Intercollegiate Tennis Association. So I'm going to start us off just kind of giving you a broader perspective, like explaining a few things just about the bigger picture of college tennis. Then I'll pass you over to Mark, who will get into some more of the nitty gritty of how you go about getting a scholarship and some of the terms that you want to familiarize yourself as you go through this process. And then I'll give you kind of an update as to where we are in terms of just college sports in general during the coronavirus period, and kind of some thoughts about the future. And then we'll open it up to some questions. So the first slide here, just talking about the alphabet of intercollegiate athletics in the USA. So probably most of you are familiar with NCAA Division I. These are the big brand name schools, the Stanfords, the UCLA, University of Texas, Florida State. But a lot of people don't understand that there's actually 5 divisions of college tennis. So you have NCAA Division 1, 2, 3, you have NAIA, which is the National Athletic Intercollegiate Association. And sorry, Mark, if you want to go back to the previous one, we've got the NJCAA, which is National Junior College Athletic Association. So some of you may not know what junior colleges are. They are 2-year institutions. So in America, you don't necessarily go straight into your degree program. You have to go through some general education, your geography, history, things that you've done in high school. But it's a 2-year institution. They're a lot cheaper, but still have some fantastic sports programs, sports facilities. A lot of international players who maybe do not meet the academic requirements for NCAA often go to junior college for a year or two to bring their academics up and then transfer to a 4-year institution. And Mark's going to discuss that a little bit more. And then the last insignia here on the slide is the ITA, so the Intercollegiate Tennis Association. So that's who I work for. We're the governing body of college tennis. We're also a coaches association. So we work closely with all 3 divisions of NCAA, NAIA, and NJCAA. We represent the coaches there. We run championships, we do rankings, results. We try and get college tennis on TV. We have a social media department, marketing, awards, coach education, a whole host of things that I encourage you to go check out on wearecollegetennis.com. So if you're a fan of college tennis or interested in college tennis, I'd encourage you to start there. So Mark, if you want to go on to the next slide. Yeah, so this is a breakdown just so we can go through the various divisions and some of the differences amongst them. So you can see at the top, I've got the divisions listed, and the side we have number of programs, number of players, number of total scholarships, and number of scholarships per team. So you can see Division 1 and Division 2, there's quite a few similarities. The international breakdown for Division 1 and Division 2, I believe there's about 60% of college tennis players Division 1 level are international. At Division 2, I think it's about 50%. At Division 3, it's about 2, maybe 3% max, because at Division 3, they don't offer any scholarships. And most international kids or their parents haven't been saving the $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 a year to pay for those costs. So a lot of international players err towards Division 1, Division 2, NAIA, or junior college, or JUCO as we have it listed there. So just take a few minutes. Happy to share this with anybody who's interested afterwards, if you want to email me or Fabio. But you can see that there's a lot of opportunity there. There's a lot of positions, a lot of players. We represent about 20,000 student athletes. So there is scholarship money out there. It just may not be at Stanford. It may not be at the University of Texas, but there's some incredible universities all across this country that I think would love to have you if you're a good student and a good tennis player. There's something there for everybody if they do their homework, do their research. So that's kind of just a breakdown of the various different divisions. Mark, I'm not sure if you can link on that link to tennis teams there on the right. This will just take you to the homepage of, okay, it may not be working. The homepage of wearecollegetennis.com, and on there you can if you click on teams, you'll see the various different breakdowns, and you can go and every college team is listed there. So you can click on their website, you can learn about their coach, you can learn the schedule that they play, some information about their school in terms of the various degree options that they provide. So there's no shortage of information out there. You don't have to go digging as much as myself and Mark did in the mid 1990s when we were trying to look for a college place. So the information's there. You just got to go find it. So Mark, I'll turn it over to you.
Yeah, I'm just going to try to get us back to the PowerPoint here, guys. Okay. How's it going, everyone? I hope you guys are doing good. And just tiny little brief background on me is I'm very fortunate. I happened to be I've been a college coach for 11 years. I played college tennis at the University of Memphis. And now I'm actually on the other side of the table helping athletes get recruited. So it's kind of nice to be able to be in a position where you've been in all facets of the recruitment game. And so happy to share just some real basics with you guys. You know, some stuff that hopefully some of you guys can learn and take a little bit of tidbits in the process. But if we probably spent a couple of hours here working on this, you probably still wouldn't know everything to do with college recruitment. It's a very complex procedure. But, you know, here's a breakdown of the scholarships. You know, typically the value of a four-year scholarship is somewhere between about the 160K to 240K range. You know, they vary sometimes, you know, especially on the female side in Division 1, you can hear a lot of people getting a full scholarship. And then sometimes it can be more of a partial scholarship for players where they're only, you know, maybe contributing maybe $10,000 to $15,000 or $5,000 towards the cost of attendance of going to university. And other time, maybe some people pay a little bit more, some people pay a little bit less. As Dave mentioned earlier, their tuition at junior colleges tend to be a lot more affordable and a lot more attainable. And there is actually a lot of scholarship available in junior college, sometimes even more valued than sometimes Division 1 and Division 2 universities, because they offer a lot of what they call tuition scholarships, where you can get a lot of your tuition covered, but you have to pay for your room and board. And books and supplies, sometimes they put a price at that around $800, so that would be included in your scholarship if you were fortunate enough to get it. And then obviously accommodation can vary in price from on to versus off campus. So regardless if you're on a full scholarship or you're not on a full scholarship, Typically after your freshman year, you'll get an opportunity to choose if you want to live on or off campus. And then food meal plans, and they can vary. You know, a typical meal plan will be 3 meals a day. You'll get your breakfast, lunch, and dinner in the evening time. And they will sometimes have various options on campus, from a buffet style to sometimes you know, a classic American fast food like a Chick-fil-A. Something that's come up in the last few years has been what's called full cost of attendance. That's something new. So it used to be 100% scholarship was like your tuition, your books, your room and board. But now they actually offer for some athletes an extra income that you're able to have on top of your scholarship, which you could use towards like stuff like movie tickets or plane costs and travel costs and stuff like that. Majority of universities are going to be able to take care of the health insurance. Some universities you will be required to pay for your health insurance. It depends on your scholarship again, but if you're on 100% scholarship, definitely a health insurance will be covered. Something that people don't really talk about and we try to educate people on is the perks regardless of the scholarship. You know, just typically we put this at a value of sometimes between maybe $5,000 to $10,000 a year. You know, a good example I usually give of this is, you know, and I'll just use an example of Ireland is, you know, if you have an injury in Ireland, you could spend, you know, a couple of €100 on going to see a physio, and it would take maybe 10 or 12 physio sessions before they actually sent you to get an MRI. And one of the nice perks is typically they're going to have some sort of doctor on campus, and a physio sometimes that goes with the team, and ultimately that physio will get you in to see an MRI, get you an MRI if they don't think that's something that they can fix. And some injury that could have maybe tingled on for maybe a couple of weeks can kind of get a diagnosis in a couple of days. So sometimes these little things that there's actually no scholarship that applies to, or can be of huge value and huge benefits. You know, typically when you're on the road, which you're representing your university, it's kind of similar to what a business trip would be. They're able to pay and take care of your food on the road and all your expenses, or they can sometimes give you a stipend per day on being able to pay for your food. So lots of different values there that you can definitely that you can see outside of just your scholarship amount. You know, typical training day, you know, this is the one thing I try to explain to all of the athletes that I work with is that, you know, it is extremely regimented. You know, sometimes people see a lot of the Hollywood kind of stuff on the internet about college athletics, which there is some great things that go on and there's some really exciting things, but, you know, a typical day is quite intense. And because you're doing high level athletics with high level academics, you're basically, the only time I felt like I used to take a break was when I was taking a shower or I was eating food. So you're pretty much moving from hour to hour, being productive and using each hour to your benefit to get everything that you can possibly do done in the day. And I would always get to bed around 10:30 because I'd be just so tired by the end of the day. I'm gonna get you guys to just have a little look at that if you want. Okay, so big one is how do you show coaches your level? So this one could be probably debated and talked about for hours, but I'm just going to take a few little points here. So, you know, a big popular one is the UTR right now at the moment. So in the last, say, several years, the UTRs has become more credible, and it's become a way of really where coaches kind of feel a lot more comfortable with understanding the level of an international player and comparing that international player level to a domestic player in the United States or a college tennis player. And what's coming into play right now at the moment is, and hopefully be here soon, is the world tennis number, which is also going to be a competing against the UTR for very similar, which is giving you a rating based off X amount of matches that you've played in the last year or so. So the feedback on the UTR and the WTN is that from talking to coaches, certainly that they absolutely use it as a small measuring tool of where you are as a tennis player. and they kind of use it as a way of maybe putting you into a bracket of certain tennis players. But for certainly the majority of coaches I talk to, is they're certainly not making a decision based off your UTR. The UTR was established to help people have a healthy way of competing and playing tennis matches. And over the period of the last couple of years, you know, sometimes it really has maybe not spit out an accurate UTR for some people. So I think for the players out there who are a little bit worried about that, is don't be worried about your UTR. Use it for its advantages, which is ultimately is a healthy competing tool rather than a national or a ranking system. And, you know, I think your results will take care of itself, and you'll fall into a bracket of X amount of range of players. And then it's ultimately your job is to show the coach that you're at the top of that bracket instead of the bottom of that bracket. And I think that's the best way of looking at it. You know, in terms of national results, from the majority of coaches I see, is I try to make it as attainable for them to view your national results, because in my opinion, that's a little bit more comparing apples to apples for yourself, and instead of comparing your results to someone else in the world. So if, you know, with your national results with your tennis federation, it's really, really important that, you know, that you're working with that federation or somebody who has an understanding of college tennis who can help you maximize your national tennis results to show the best version of you. We're very fortunate here in Ireland, where our National Tennis Federation is very, have created their performance strategy to now actually facilitate and hopefully help college tennis players become, get the results more easily accessible, and give them the best opportunity to present the best version of self by creating tournaments that's going to help coaches evaluate them better. Another great way to show your level is play credible matches versus current college players. So if you're say a junior in high school, and you in the summertime, there's like 10 or 12 of the college players that come back from competing, is find a way to be able to compete against them in tournaments, because that'll give the coach a really good understanding of exactly kind of where your level's at. So suddenly their UTR maybe mightn't be as important, especially if you don't have a high UTR, that sometimes these credible matches versus a player that they compare against and your result against can really help them feel more comfortable with what your level's at. Another great example is a showcase. I noticed that's become more and more popular over the last few years, where college coaches are able to get together. A little bit trickier this year with COVID, but certainly if you have an opportunity to get to a showcase, definitely do it, as long as it's ran the right way and giving you the best fair opportunity to get recruited. You know, videos is one of those things. If you Google college tennis videos on the internet, it's absolutely incredible what how many videos come up and what you see. You know, from my personal dealings with it, I think the videos, majority of the time, are actually done the wrong way, and they actually sometimes can hurt the athletes, because they really don't give the athlete and the coach a real sense of exactly what that level is of the player. So it's really important, you know, if you're doing this on your own or you've hired a recruiting agency, that you make sure that you do your video as good as you can possibly do it to show that your real level. You know, that's something that we do with our athletes, is we do several videos. Especially this year, we've upped our video amount of the players, because we want to give that coach as much footage and as much real footage that they can get, so that they can start to feel more comfortable about the player, of what they're going to get, so they can meet their expectations. Okay, so really, you know, this is a really basic one again, is staying eligible with academics. And so really what happens is with what Dave said, there's NCAA, there's NJCAA, and there's like NAIA. So there's all of these different bodies that will evaluate your transcripts of your high school as well as the university. So, you know, there's not one academic way of doing things, because there's so many different ways of people evaluating in different ways. But the most important thing that you do is stay in school. If you have any sort of gap in your education, they're going to basically flag that immediately on you. So if you're a person that, you know, has decided, say, when you're at the age of 15 or 16, that you're going to take time off and play professional tennis full time, and you're not going to do your schooling anymore, then you're probably going to make your life very, very hard in the long term. So the best way to look at your academics is, in the end of the day, there is enough hours in the day to be able to do high level sport and high level academics at a high level. So the best way to view it is, you just got to get a little bit more organized and disciplined with your time, but don't take a gap in your education, because ultimately it'll minimize your possibilities in years to come. And then, you know, in the way of Americans are viewing their grade, their years, is they have 9th grade through 12th grade. So they view their 9th grade is like a freshman in high school, and 12th grade would be a senior in high school. And so they're going to look at your last 4 years of your education in high school, and then they will be able to determine what those grades are compared to an American high school student. And they will give you what's called a grade point average, which will then determine if you are eligible to compete in college athletics, and you're also eligible to be able to be admitted into the universities. These core classes, it'll take me a long time to explain that, but what you're needing 16 core classes, which is made up of an English and maths and a physical and a social science. So an example of a physical science would be something like a biology or those type of courses, and an idea of a social science would be something like a geography, and along those lines. So it's very important, especially for Division 1, that you're doing those core classes and you're making sure that you tick those boxes, because that can also come back to hurt a little bit on your eligibility when it comes time to getting ready to compete. It's been a very interesting year for the SAT and the ACT. So we've gone from basically where the SAT was at some places was actually viewed just as important, if not more important, than your high school grades. And this is a standardized test that everybody had to take to be admitted into a university in America. But in 2021 and 2020, they've kind of moved a little bit away from this model, because of the fact of COVID, but also some reasons too as well, that they felt that sometimes this standardized test has not become very equal for everybody to be judged and measured on. An ACT is another version of the SAT. It's another standardized test that you can take. You can still take these exams in some countries. In Ireland, you actually currently cannot take any of these. So sometimes what is also being thrown out there's an option for an SAT or an ACT, but it's a computerized version of this. And sometimes universities are requiring that too as well. If you're from a non-English speaking country, you're going to need TOEFL. And TOEFL is an English, it's an English exam that shows that you're able to comprehend and learn through the English language. Each university is going to require a different score to get admitted. Some universities require a very high score and some require a very minimal score. But that's a very expensive exam. And so if you're from a non-English speaking country, you're going to have to do a really good job of preparing for that TOEFL, because it can be something that can be very tricky and very expensive. I've seen some players have to take that TOEFL 4 and 5 times before. So Dave also talked a little bit about the difference between a 4-year university and a 2-year university, which is the NJCAA. The great thing about the junior college is it is cheaper and more affordable. But if you go to a junior college for the first 2 years, you're going to be doing the same subjects for the majority of the time that you would do at the 4-year university. So in your first 2 years of your university at junior college, it's sometimes very similar to what you do at your first two years of your 4-year university. But after you finish at a 2-year university and you graduate from a 4-year university, then you get the degree from the 4-year university. So sometimes for some people, the junior college can be a great route, because you guys, there's a question that just popped up there, guys. Can everyone see that? Should I take that off the screen?
Oh, it's fine, Mark.
It's a poll.
Just pop up for 20 seconds.
Okay, sorry. So basically, yeah, so, you know, sometimes people say they don't really want to go to a junior college, but ultimately sometimes that junior college can be a much better pathway for them. We did have a player who just recently signed for one of the best, if not the best, junior college program, and he's going to get better facilities than he would at a Division 1 university, and hopefully that's going to give him the 2 years to help develop academically and athletically to attract a better offer to a 4-year university. Sorry guys, my slide's not moving now. There we go.
I didn't break it, did I, Mark?
I don't know. It's 1 second, guys. Sorry. Let's go back in here. We'll go back. Okay, everyone see that? All right, increase in scholarship, academics to increase your value as an athlete. So this is really, really important is, and I tell all our athletes that we're working with, was the value of your academics can be sometimes viewed as just as important as your athletics, because especially on the men's side, the coaches only have 4.5 scholarships in Division 1 if they're fully funded, to be able to give them the opportunity to have 8 and 9 players on the roster. Or you might have a women's team that's fully funded with 8 full scholarships in Division 1, but sometimes they need 1 of those or 2 of those scholarships to have certain academic requirements. So you're going to increase your value in your as an athlete if you do your academics right from the very beginning, which would be your 9th grade year, your freshman year, okay? Because you become more valuable to the coach. You know, with the difference between private versus public university academics, the private universities in America tend to offer incredible academic packages for very good students. So you could sometimes go to a university on less athletic scholarship than you would academic scholarship. We had one player placed about 2 years ago where he got a full scholarship on the men's side, but he was able to get 2/3 of that from the academic side and 1/3 from the athletic side. He never would have been able to get that sort of scholarship if it wasn't for his good academics. So, you know, it's also really important too, because it shows the coaches that you have good discipline and you're going to be a very valuable person when you go on campus too, because the coaches value your academics and your GPA that when you represent the university as a tennis team too as well. All right, let's go to the next one. Sorry, guys, don't know why I'm having such trouble with it. Okay, Dave, I'll pass it back to you a little bit there.
Yeah, thanks, Mark. I'm trying to answer some questions here as we go, and Mark, maybe you can hop in there and type a few answers as well. But happy to get into more of that. But yeah, just kind of, again, bringing you back to the bigger picture of college tennis. So obviously it's been a challenging time for every industry right now, other than maybe Zoom and Netflix and a couple of others. But college sports have been hit hard, and we've lost a lot of programs, not just tennis programs, but non-revenue sports. So non-revenue sports are basically considered everything except American football and basketball. Because we're not charging tickets to come in and watch the tennis. So at all 5 divisions, we've lost 60 programs since March. Even last week, we lost another 2 programs at NAIA level. Oklahoma Baptist lost their men's and women's program. So it's still happening, even though the school year has started. It's still happening, and unfortunately, we're expecting more to come in the following months, but hopefully not as many as we've seen here previously. So there's still uncertainty about what college sports is going to look like in the new year. A lot at Division 1 level, well, really for all NCAA Division 1, 2, and 3, they rely heavily on the income from their NCAA basketball tournament, which some of you may have heard about in the past. It's a huge event over here. It covers basically the whole month of March. It's called March Madness, and brings in about $1 billion in revenue for the NCAA. So last year, this tournament got postponed. They're now trying to create a bubble this year in April for the NCAA basketball tournament, so that revenue can come in and be distributed to their member institutions. So with that being said, just recognizing that there are going to be less opportunities out there. There are going to be less scholarships out there. A reason there's going to be less scholarships, not just because programs have been eliminated, but the players last year, their season was cut short in March. So when everything was getting shut down, obviously the college sports season was getting shut down as well. So all those players that were participating in the season last year now get another year of eligibility. So to put it in a simple context as possible, if you think about a player who was going into their last year this year, going into their senior year of college, and were getting ready to graduate in May of 2021, well, now they can stay an extra year and they can maybe do a master's, they can maybe spread out their classes so that they're not graduating in May, they're going to continue their undergraduate degree program for another year, but they can stay on for another year now because their season got cut short. So what that means is that coaches are keeping players on scholarship that they weren't anticipating, that they were expecting to recruit new players for those positions. So between programs being eliminated, players getting an extra year of eligibility, probably some colleges are going to be looking at how do they reduce costs. Well, one way to reduce costs is through reducing the number of scholarships. The scholarships are basically a fixed cost that go up every year. And so there's a lot of factors coming together right now that is making this, I guess, the pathway to college tennis a little more challenging than it has been in the past. And so I'd really recommend, from the seat that I sit in, I'd recommend trying to use a recruiting service such as Mark's, because there's so many ways that you can mess up this process that may prevent you from being able to take advantage of a scholarship at a future point, whether it's eligibility issues, academic issues, understanding how you're going to get in front of coaches, how you're going to stand out in front of coaches, because coaches are going to be a lot more picky than they have been in the past. Not that they haven't been picky, they've been very picky, but they're going to be very selective with who they choose to give scholarships to here for at least the next several years until things get back to whatever normal is going to be. So definitely encourage you to explore those options, learn as much as you can, do as much research on the internet as you can, speak to former college tennis players if you know of any, but definitely consider using a recruitment service here going forward, because it's going to be highly competitive, even more competitive than it has been in the past. And you've just got to be aware of what is going on right now and adapt accordingly. So those would be a few thoughts from me, but happy to open it up to Q&A now and go from there.
Huge thanks, Dave. Maybe Mark can stop sharing the screen if it's possible, but very informative. It was, the college system is it's quite complicated. It's not as easy as I want to go to college there. Send them a few videos and you get a yes or no. There's obviously people have to consider if they have a UTR, their rankings, are they playing enough matches at home? Have they played other college kids to get a barometer of where you are? And then this whole academic side, picking your course. And then I think something you maybe didn't touch on was actually visiting the colleges. I know it's a bit tougher now at the moment. I think they're probably doing virtual tours, but to see if you get a feel for it, because many people get great scholarships, they go visit the place and they realize they don't like it. So how would somebody now, before we kick off some of the questions that are going to be asked and Cian's going to introduce them, my question is, in the current times, if you get, let's say I get Notre Dame, a few Irish players have gone over there a few years ago, Barry King and Jane Fenley. How would you be able to get a feel for the university when it's hard to travel over there?
Yeah, I'm happy to go first there, Mark. I know a lot of coaches right now are doing virtual tours. So they've just, again, recognized the situation that they're in. We're under what's called a recruiting dead period right now. So basically coaches are unable to recruit off campus. They're not allowed to do any official visits or unofficial visits on their campus. So basically they can't interact or evaluate players live right now. And that's in effect until January 1st, 2021, but all indicators are pointing toward that being extended through probably June 1st of 2021. So again, this is very frustrating for coaches, very frustrating for players as well. So that's where Mark was saying about the videos become more important than ever. But look, these schools, especially somewhere like Notre Dame, they've figured out this tech piece. They've so much information on their websites now. A coach can do a walkthrough, so you know, video on their phone, and hey, here's the library, here's where the tennis courts are. So yeah, you can absolutely ask a coach if there is some you know, connection there, and it seems like the coach is very interested. I'm sure the coach will want to put their best foot forward and do everything they can to expose that player to the campus. But also it might be worth checking in with some of the players on the team, Facebook, Instagram, whatever it is, and just connecting and asking them about their experience there, why they chose that university. Has it lived up to the expectation? Does it align with what the coach said it was going to be? So there's, again, it's all about the homework, and that's where the recruiting service comes in as well, in terms of, you know, the people like Mark understand, you know, the programs where the player might be a good fit. Are they going to gel well with the coach? Does it tick all the boxes that they're looking for from degree programs and you know, the size of the campus, or maybe indoor versus outdoor? There's so many elements there. But Mark, over to you.
Yeah, I think Fabio, that's where I'm a little bit fortunate, is because like Dave said there, the fit is, you know, I've kind of sat down and had coffees with a lot of these coaches, and I've sat on the benches coaching against them, and if I don't know the coaches personally, I'm able to call a coach that I really trust and I know, and try to find the fit of the personality. And that's probably the biggest thing that gets missed in this. I think we get so wrapped up in all of this, what we like to call the secondary things instead of the primary things, which the primary things for me and the athletes I deal with are like making sure that, you know, you fit into the team atmosphere, and the coach personality and the coach fit for you is going to make you the best version of yourself. You know, we've seen some incredible, in my time, I saw some incredible, like top 50 ITF junior players have some struggles because maybe they didn't have the right fit over there. And then I've seen some players that were, you know, I mean, a good example, guy you had on Kupfer. I remember coaching against him his freshman year, watching him like compete against one of our guys in Memphis. And I was like, from the very get-go, I was like, who in the world is this guy? This guy's going to be a superstar, you know? So, you know, I think he got the right fit, probably coach personality-wise for him. And it really worked out well in those 4 years. So, look, I think it's important for everyone to know is like the virtual campus tours are great. All the information you find on the internet is absolutely great. But I think the most important thing in the recruitment process is making sure you find the right fit for your personality, because that's going to make you happy in the long term.
Great answer. And just before Keane jumps in with some questions, what my experience is from colleges, a lot of you guys like Mark and Dave gone to US college, and so many other Irish players, and they've all come back with great relationships with their teammates and their coaches especially. And it's just great to see, like, they sort of saw some sort of a father figure in the coach that's helped them even relax some players, like some being a bit hyper before they go over, and they've grounded them. And as well as tennis, I think they've all learned big life lessons over there. It's more than just the tennis they learn over there. And on to Keane with some questions.
All right, perfect. We'll jump straight into it then, guys, because you guys actually answered a lot of them, but we still have quite a few more outstanding. So I'll pass it over to Dave first. And Dave, are chances better or worse in summer 2021 to actually obtain a scholarship?
Are they better or worse? They're worse than traditionally they have been, yes, because of the eligibility component. So yes, there's just less scholarships out there right now. Coaches are not able to recruit, like I've said, in person. They have players making decisions as to whether they're they're going to come back for another year. And then also coaches are worried about just, their programs as well in general. And do they want to make any long-term decisions at this moment when their athletic department might be in some financial difficulties? And, I don't know. Look, each case is different. Each university is different. Each coach has a different situation. But there's a lot of considerations. So yes, the answer is it's going to be challenging for the next few years, I would imagine.
And then just as a follow-up to that, Dave, because a lot of tennis clubs have been closed around the world, do you expect the level to be the same or different level? Or I know if there's not as many actual scholarships there, the level's probably going to stay the same. But what do you think on that?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, depends what part of the world you're in. I'm sitting here in Arizona, and it's business as usual. People are at the clubs playing their tennis and going to the bars and to the gym and all the rest of it. I think, look, at the end of the day, if you're dedicated to your tennis, you're going to find a way. You're going to keep yourself fit. You're going to work on maybe some of the things that you've ignored for a while. It might be the mental side of the game. It might be your mobility. It might be just maybe you can get access just to be out there by yourself and work on your serve for a while. So I don't see the level dropping anytime soon. I mean, the level of college tennis just continues to get higher and higher, the depth. I don't know that college tennis necessarily produces that same world-class, John McEnroe, Jimmy Connors, James Blake type player. But also at the bottom level, the depth is just, the sixth player now on a team is as good as, a number one player used to be maybe 20 years ago. So I don't see that changing anytime soon.
Well, and Keane, can I follow up on that too as well?
Absolutely. Yeah.
I think you just need to create your own unique pathway. So yes, absolutely, this is a major pothole 2021, especially if you're from some parts of the world. But you just got to create your own unique pathway, and that doesn't have to be the same pathway as every other person. There's a great story from when I coached at North Florida. There was a player who started very, very late, an Irish guy who Fabio probably know, Julian Bradley. Yeah. And Julian wouldn't have been at the same elite level because he started tennis so late, but he created a pathway for himself that ultimately ended up giving himself a couple of years in university in Ireland before then attracting the offer of the scholarship from myself in North Florida to get to where he wanted. And he's gone on, he's still playing a lot of tennis. He's a very good professional tennis player. He's still working on his game and he still hasn't come close to peaking at his level. So I think everybody just has to say and this is where someone like myself comes in. I'm not really just a recruiting agency. I'm actually, a little bit of a life coach with the players too, as well as I help them, create that unique pathway and do that bespoke kind of way of what's best for them that gets them to their end game. Because people got a little bit get obsessed about getting to where they want to get too fast, too quick, instead of saying, look, here's your end game. Let's work our way backwards. Let's see what we can do in the next couple of years to make sure that we're ready to get to your end game,
Perfect. Mark, I might ask you then, transferability of programs. So I know a business degree is kind of broad and you can use it anywhere, but something that's maybe a bit more regulated, something like a physio or a school teacher, are those transferable back to Europe or Australia or elsewhere?
Yeah, it's a really interesting one. So one question I always get a lot is, so the two most common ones would be the pre-med and the pre-law degrees that you get. So the first thing in America is you're going to do part of your education as a general education. So that's not the same as everywhere else in the world. So you're going to do a certain amount of hours in your college that everybody does the same thing. And the great unique part of that too, as well, is that it does give you the opportunity to make sure that when you're ready to do your degree, that you've chosen the right degree. And you can move around your degree in America too as well, which I love. That's not quite the same here. So if you don't think you're ready to make a decision at the age of 17 or 18, then you've still got time. And so the big difference is, though, is because you do that general education and you finish with a pre-law, pre-med degree, yeah, you've got to go on and you got to do more education, especially because the rules and laws of each country that you go back to are going to be different. So, at the end of the day, is for me, the value of getting a university degree in America goes beyond the degree. It goes as part of the experience. It goes as part of being able to be a part of different cultures and learned all of these things about the tennis world and create connections and networks. So I sometimes think that people sometimes it can be in a little bit of a rush to get the end of the degree and get into the workforce. But in my opinion, if you played tennis since the age of 10 and basically at the age of 18 you're rushing to not go to university when you're in America because you think that you can get your degree finished in your country a year or two earlier, then I probably would say, like, what's the rush? Use this time and enjoy this time to play your tennis at the highest level possible, and maybe take a little bit longer process to get your degree,
Dave, I'll throw it back to you then. So much choice when you go to the US, so much choice on where to go. Any tips on narrowing it down to where might be a good fit for you?
Yeah, that's a great question. I encourage everybody to ask themselves as many questions as possible. The more self-awareness you have around, what it is you want out of your college experience, what you want out of your life, the easier it will be to make those decisions. But you want to get a sense of, simple things like I talked about earlier, the weather. It doesn't matter to you if you're playing indoors a large part of the year. Does your game match that, playing a little faster tempo? Or would you prefer to be on a slow, hard court in Florida or something like that, out in the sun, training on a daily basis? So something simple like that. Degree programs, obviously. Are you very clear on what it is you want to study, or are you not sure? And does that matter? Obviously, as Mark alluded to about the coach, do you have a good feeling about the coach? Do you believe the coach is going to be around for a few years? Is player development really important to you? And how is this coach demonstrated that they're going to be able to take your game to where you want it to go? The other, bells and whistles, the facilities and dorm rooms and things like that. I think Mark said those are secondary indicators that I couldn't agree more. I think so often players get wrapped up in, this place has, this really nice outdoor facility. They have 18 courts. This other place only has 6. But it's how are they using those courts? How are they using those times? I think the whole team culture, the coaching philosophy, do you fit in with the other players? Are they mostly international? Are you comfortable with that? Would you prefer to be on a team that has maybe 50% international, 50% American? There's so many things there that you need to ask yourself before you go down this pathway. But I'd also encourage you to cast your net as wide as possible to start with. I mean, learn as much as you can. Don't just say, okay, I want this one college in this one place, or I'm only going to Southern Florida. If I don't get an offer in Miami or Fort Lauderdale, I'm not going. It's opening yourself up to a lot of possibilities, and then through that process narrowing them down, and then hopefully you have some choices to make. Hopefully you get to a point where maybe there's 3 or 4 colleges that are really interested, maybe have offered you a scholarship, and then you've got to make some tough decisions, and hopefully you're really clear by then as to what you want, and allow you to make the best decision for your future.
That's awesome. I'm sure I'd be happy with that answer now. Mark, I'll go back to you. How many players play on match day typically, and how do players avoid joining a team where they may not actually be first choice on the team and maybe don't get the court time that they want?
Yeah, and it's a huge part of the recruitment process, because sometimes if you get a little bit over recruited, then you find yourself in this predicament: is how can you get better as a tennis player if you're sitting on the bench? Obviously sitting on the bench, you still have to do a good job of being a good teammate, but you can't get better as a tennis player, right? So no, it's very important. 6 players play in the singles lineup, and then there'll be 6 doubles players that are broken into 3 teams. And sometimes it can be the same 6 players playing singles and doubles. At other times it can be, 2 or 3, or maybe sometimes 4 different doubles players that don't play singles. So, usually a typical roster is about, on the men's side, can be like 8 to 9 players. And then on a female side, females tend to be usually 8. And sometimes 9 too as well. A really large roster size could sometimes put people at 14 and 16 players. So once again, that's where it goes back to finding the right fit. if you're going to university, that's, yeah, it's surrounded by palm trees, and it's got the beach 2 minutes from there, but there's 16 players on the team, and having a close relationship with your coach is important to you. Then you're setting yourself up for failure, because, you know, you're going to be one of 16 players that he's got to make sure he gives a piece of the pie of his time to. So I think once again, it kind of comes down to is making sure that you get the right fit. And how do you get the right fit? Well, like, you can try do it on your own, which there's definitely people that can find the right fit on their own, but it's definitely something that's quite tricky and hard to find, because, you know, you can be a phenomenal tennis player and you get recruited by 15 schools, and all those 15 schools want you so bad, but 13 out of those 15 schools mightn't even be the right fit for you, but they're maybe not even telling you that they're the right fit for you, because they want to get you so bad, because they know you're going to win lots of tennis matches. So, and then maybe there's 2 in there that are the right fit and also want you to win tennis matches. And it's really about trying to figure out that little piece, like that piece there that makes it a good 4-year experience and a positive experience for both sides to add value to each other.
Awesome. Dave, what's the main difference between D1 and D3? Obviously, apart from the level of tennis is probably higher in D1.
Yeah, I mean, yes, again, the depth at the D1 level is definitely there. Not to say at D3, there's some phenomenal players that have come through D3 and absolutely can hold their own against some of the top players at Division 1. We see that year after year. You know, D3s, you know, they don't, again, I'm speaking in general terms, they may not have the same type of resources that some of the top Division 1 programs have in terms of facilities, in terms of equipment, gear, travel, you know, again, all of those bells and whistles. I think at Division 3, often, again, this is just my experience in terms of interacting a lot with coaches at all different levels. But I think at Division 3, the team element really shines through. That a lot of players are coming there because they're not receiving a scholarship, so they're there to be part of a team, and they're not necessarily as concerned about their own individual development. Where at Division 1, especially at the top level, players are coming in as individuals. They're used to being selfish tennis players, and you know, the coach is then trying to get them to buy in more to the team concept, and sometimes that takes a little bit longer. But Division 3, I mean, there's some outstanding academic institutions. I mean, some of the best institutions in the world are at the D3 level. They're often smaller campuses, you know, not as many students as you would have. We're located by Arizona State University, 60,000 students here. At a lot of D3, it's just going to be, you know, a couple of thousand, 2,000 to 7,000, somewhere in that range. So those would be some of the key differences. Mark, I'm not sure if you'd add anything else to that.
No, I mean, one that probably gets overlooked a lot is NAIA. You know, and I think it's a great option. It's sometimes can be like the Division 3 smaller schools. And, you know, in the last couple of years, they've gotten a lot more professional with their organization about how they go about doing things, but they're sometimes a little bit more flexible on the rules. You know, I have one athlete who's at an NAIA school, and I think they played like 40 matches like in 2019, 2020. And Division 1 college coaches would be drooling to be able to play 40 matches in a year, but the rules don't allow them. So I think once it keeps coming back to me is that, you know, you got to look at it. Every athlete it's a bespoke situation, and you have to say, okay, well, what's the fit for me? And is it Division 3? Is it Division 1? Is it NAIA? Which is going to get me to my end game? And then I've got to look at all the pieces and see if I can predict that the best I can.
We have a few questions that are very, very similar. Mark, it's directed towards you. What's the approximate cost of a recruiting service? You don't have to give specifics, but just kind of ballpark figure.
Yeah, geez, when I was trying to set my price, I tried to get as many of the prices from the other, the recruiting services, and tried to put myself at a fair rate. So I would say you're looking at there's ones up there at $5,000 I've known, and There's some down as low as maybe 2,000, maybe 2,000, 2,500 maybe. So somewhere in that. But what I would say to people is certainly is when I looked at my price, I said, okay, what's the value of my time and my experience and everything I've done, and if I charge myself a little bit too low, then basically, you know, I won't be able to do exactly what I tell the athlete that I'm gonna and the family that I'm gonna be able to do. So I think when you're looking at price, it's a tricky one, because, you know, in the end of the day, is if you pay 500 to 1,000 for one that does a better job, or then probably over the next 20 years, it's going to be the best money you ever spent. So I would say when picking a recruiting agency, if you decide to go and do your research, make sure you find out the ones that you feel that have some proven record of success, and there's a trust there that they're doing right by their clients, which, look, majority of recruiting agencies do. I was actually on the other side of it as the coach, so I was dealing with all the recruiting agencies when I was the coach. So I know all the ones that do a really good job, and I know some of the ones that do maybe a little bit of an average job. So, so you just have to do your research and make sure you make a good educated decision.
Can I just jump in there, Mark? Just one question regarding that. Is it a no placement, no fee method, or what way does it work?
I wish it was like that, but then we'd be agents, so we have to be consultants. So we cannot promise a player an outcome, and based off that outcome, we get rewarded for our fee. So we have to have a very set standard fees, and we have to make sure that we don't deviate from that based off like any situation that occurs. So, you know, there is a lot of recruiting agencies that probably, maybe operate in the gray area with that sort of stuff. But no, certainly we have to make, what I do is with our athletes, I give them a best case scenario, middle case scenario, and worst case scenario based off all of the research that I give them. And look, it's not in my interest to take on somebody that I'm going to basically have the worst case scenario, because especially in Ireland, because I'm mainly doing Irish athletes and my service is very much geared towards that, is that, you know, I don't want bad outcomes, because bad outcomes, Ireland's too small. So I have to make sure that I'm very selective in making sure that I give a realistic picture of what I think is going to happen based off my experience and my recruiting from the opposite side of being the coach.
Great, thanks.
Okay, Dave, I'll pass back to you then. Are you able to give like a rough, now someone here is asking, do you have an example of an ITF ranking that will land you in a Division 1 and a Division 2 and a Division 3? Is there kind of cutoff points, or is it kind of a combination of tennis ability and academics and everything?
Yeah, it's a tough one. I definitely don't want parents and players out there shooting for a specific ITF ranking. I mean, look, if you have it really comes down to results. It doesn't matter if it's at an ITF tournament, if it's a league match, if it's a national tournament, a UTR tournament. I think, you know, if you get too wrapped up in the ITF international rankings, you can spend a lot of money chasing points. But, you know, coaches are onto that. You know, coach doesn't, you know, they look at a player and they're 117 in the world, but they've, you know, haven't beaten anybody to get those points. They've played in a lot of third world countries. They've built up kind of this artificial ITF ranking. You know, you're not really fooling anybody. A coach is really going to do their homework. This is a huge investment, as Mark's already said. So I'm not trying to dodge the question here. I mean, we've had players, at the Division 1 level who, yes, have been high as maybe 1 or 2 in the world in ITF. And have done pretty well. We've had others in the top 20 that I've seen that really haven't panned out at all, maybe struggled to make their lineup. And then we have others that are, 500 ITF who go on to, be a top 50 college player, like myself. So it just, don't get too wrapped up in the rankings, get more wrapped up in how you're getting verifiable results, and go chase the results. Go play against players that are already in the college system, or maybe recently graduated or just signed with a college. Those are gold for college coaches, because they've seen these players or they have a point of comparison. UTR at this moment in time is important, but it's not everything. Like Mark says, you're within a range there. And how do you, showcase yourself to be at the top of that range? So Mark, would you agree or disagree?
Yeah, I couldn't agree to any more. I'll probably give you an example. Another athlete we worked with, he was a late starter again, wasn't sure if he could be able to ever go on a scholarship to America. You know, he had a good skill set. He was very athletic, loved tennis, and a good competitor in other sports. So you look at all those things and you say, okay, well, that player just needs a little bit of time. So that player basically didn't like obsess about, he was supposed to go in 2021. So he didn't obsess about going in 2021. He had a very open mind to like 3 or 4 different branches that we were sending him on to make sure that like he didn't feel like he was in one corner. So what actually happened in the end, he signed for in 2021, but really he actually, that wasn't his like main concern. His main concern was getting better. And as a result, he got better and he actually created an opportunity for 2021. But he just wasn't sitting there saying, golly, if I have to win this next match, this next tournament's going to get me recruited. I think that's the biggest thing that I'm explaining to these players is like, I said, that's not going to help you in the short term, but when you get over to America and you're playing for a college, it's also going to hurt you too as well, because that mindset, they're going to try to like get that mindset out of you. And they're going to get you into more of a process orientated mindset of seeing things in the long term rather than the short term. And so hope that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. So we'll do 2 more questions, guys, because we like to keep them to an hour. So Mark, I'll go back to you real quick. Question that was asked beforehand about support systems for international students. I think anyone that's studied internationally knows the importance of having a good support network there, especially when things don't exactly go to plan. In typical US college, what does that look like?
So the exact question is, what does a support system look like?
Yeah, like could you give an example, like the support system for a tennis player? Now, it doesn't have to be necessarily tennis related; it could also be academic related, but just in general.
I'll try to do it as short as I can.
Yeah.
You know, your teammates are going to be a huge support for you. Obviously, your coaches. You hopefully have an assistant coach and maybe even 2 assistant coaches. And you know, then you'll have an academic counselor who's in charge of your academics. That's going to be a very important relationship for you. You're also going to have a strength and conditioning coach. You're going to hopefully, if you go to university at a certain level, you'll have a physio. And so sometimes there could be up to 6. My last university I was at, I think we had 7 support staff that were there helping like 9 players. So it was pretty crazy. But you know, at the end of the day, is the most important support staff is going to be your head coach, and your head coach is going to be, again, that's the person that's going to be like your father figure. The reason why I'm doing what I'm doing is I was fortunate enough at Memphis to have, it was a coach that was like my father figure, and he actually inspired me to be a college coach. So I was lucky. That was a big support system for me. So
perfect. I'll pass you back to Fabio then. Thanks for answering the questions.
Yeah, Dave has to run now. I'm not sure if Mark can stay on for a few more minutes. Can you stay on, Mark, or do you have to go?
Yeah.
Okay, we have a couple more questions here.
Right.
Mark can answer them.
Fabio,
Dave,
Mark, Ian.
Thanks,
really,
Dave.
That's right.
thanks a lot. You're great. Okay, Mark, a few more questions here. As usual, we're going to cut it and they come in the last minute. Maybe, yeah, you can just fire away. I'll just one question here from Justin Lammy. How do you approach, now this is not somebody who's probably not going to use your service, Mark, but how do you approach a coach about scholarships? How does that relationship work when you want to outreach to a coach?
In terms, just a general first case outreach.
Yes, I go on to Dave's website, I see all the schools there and I see the coach and I say, I want to go to Berkeley. Peter Wright's phone number's up there, email. How do I reach out to Peter Wright?
Yeah, I mean, hopefully try to create some sort of connection between you and the coach, that you've maybe someone in common, and just say, you know, if you've got 5 or 10 minutes to talk on the phone, I'd really appreciate it. And then you hope that the coach, you know, and for the most part, the coaches are doing their jobs the right way. We'll take the time to write back to you. And, you know, everybody has 5 or 10 minutes for every single person. So I'd say that would be the first one. I think emails, sometimes people don't like to think that they're bothering people with phone calls. But funny enough, is when I was a coach, I would prefer that someone bothered me with a phone call rather than an email, because in 5 or 10 minutes to answer every question would probably take me 30 minutes in an email. So So yeah, find a way to try to just get in touch with the coach and through a mutual relationship or something that you can find, you know. So.
And how important is that mutual relationship? That must help so much when you have somebody in connection rather than a straight outreach. There's a bit of trust there then.
Yeah, there is a trust, but also as well as sometimes with the coach and the player too as well. It's very challenging because, you know, the coach can be sometimes very emotionally connected to the player. And when the coach is very emotionally connected to the player, when the college coach is speaking to the coach, obviously they know that there's going to be a huge bias towards how they're talking and viewing their players. So sometimes it's even as a coach, sometimes you're actually better off getting someone who you trust, who's a peer and like another coach, to actually reach out for you and maybe someone who's a little more neutral, maybe in the second conversation to give an assessment of your player, you know. So, but obviously if you have a relationship with the coach to begin with, there's a trust there, then that's great, you know.
Great. Okay, just a couple more questions there. Cian, do you want to jump in?
Yeah, I'll go in. So Mark, someone here wants to play tennis fall 2021 in the US. What's the time frame for starting to get things together, or have the best offers already gone?
Yeah, so in this current year, it's very different than other years. So it's definitely getting later and later and later. And in other years, money and scholarships would continue to keep flowing. I don't necessarily think that's going to be the case this year. So if you haven't done anything yet to start with, you gotta go right now, like, because, you know, ultimately you're probably 2 years behind the majority of people who have been doing this. So it's definitely not too late. But once again, I think that player should probably think to himself is, okay, well, don't handcuff myself to 2021, create lots of branches in my tree to make sure I get to my end game, and give myself lots of options. So I start the process of trying to get to 2021, but you know what, if it doesn't, it's not supposed to be, and I'm going to have another opportunity for another time frame or another situation to occur.
So last few, how has UTR impacted the tennis recruiting process? I know we've already talked about it, but has it become like a huge thing now to rely on?
So I, you know, if we look at it, say like as a graph, I would say probably 7 years ago as a college coach, all of the Division I coaches were starting to really use it and utilize it as, maybe I use it as like 20% of maybe my measuring tool of measuring a player's level. Okay. And then it got to a stage where then Division II, Division III, NAIA, JUCO were all using it probably 3 years ago. And what I'm seeing now from talking to college coaches is actually less and less of the top college coaches are putting value in it. And I always say it's probably because of one reason. It's not the UTR's fault. It's the first letter of UTR is universal. And there's been no universal tennis played. So how is it supposed to give you something accurate if there's no universal tennis? So right now at the moment, I think it's probably the value of the UTR, of the credibility of it's maybe starting to go a little bit down. You know, I think UTR have done a fantastic job. They've tried to do the best they can. But I would say, yeah, college coaches, probably it's peaked at where they were valuing it. And I would say sometimes some of the smaller coaches, smaller schools with smaller programs are still probably using a little bit too much, I see. I have to take a little bit of time to try to explain to them and give them lots of reasons why there's no value in the UTR of the player that I'm sending to them, and that they need to use a few more measuring tools rather than the UTR.
And we have one last question here. It's to do with SATs, and this question's actually Irish specific. I know a few years ago there's only one place in Ireland where you can do them. Maybe that's changed, but maybe you could even just answer the question about how would you go about actually sitting an SAT in any country for anyone that's listening internationally.
Yeah, so I'm very fortunate. I know the person who does the SAT in Ireland, so I get all that information. Like pretty much before, like as soon as it's decided what they're going to do. You know, that person has very much said that it's on ice at the moment. Definitely in the short term. The ACT can be done up in Northern Ireland, and it's done on computerized. But the last 2 or 3 there, they didn't cancel them right up until the very end. And then they cancelled them. So, you know, I do believe they've gone ahead in Great Britain. So that person has the option to go, obviously, to go up to Great Britain to do it in London. But, you know, I do think that there should be opportunities out there for you to do something other than the SAT to show that your academic level is at a certain level. So maybe it's worth just talking to the coaches a little bit more about another option that could be available.
Is there a general one-stop shop of where to go to, depending on which country you're in, to actually see where the test is facilitated?
Yeah, the SAT, there's a drop-down menu. You can put it in there. That's pretty straightforward, and it shows you all the different countries and then all the different places in that country where you can take an SAT.
Okay, perfect.
Great. Well, I think we're going to have to cut it there because the questions keep on coming in. But one thing I'm just curious about, Mark, is I know we had some Irish guys who hit the Ivy League colleges back in the day, John Dorans, and who were extraordinary tennis players. And I always heard they didn't do sports scholarships. Do those Ivy League colleges like Harvard, do they offer scholarships for tennis at the moment?
No, so they've never offered scholarships. It's all financial aid, need-based. So you do all your academics and your financial backgrounds of your taxes, and then based off your need and your academics, then they create an offer for you. So sometimes that offer can be incredible if you're from a very low-income household, and if you're from an affluent family, then sometimes they can not too good, and you have to pay quite a lot of money. So yeah, so that's just need based. And there is a few other universities that have that model as well in Division 1 too as well. So
great, Mark. Well, thank you very much for your time. Really appreciate it. Loads of information there, that stuff I wish I knew 20 years ago. But and Dave, who's left us, thank you very much. Before I want to do a quick poll. Actually, I'm going to do the poll now. It's going to be our next webinar. What you'd like the webinar to be on, but you guys answer that. But Mark, obviously his service, you need information, you can contact him at All Sports Recruiting. We can send you on his links afterwards, which we will do. Also, Mark, maybe we can make the notes, share the presentation notes if that's possible.
Yeah, absolutely.
Some people have asked for that. And yeah, that's it. Really appreciate your time. Thanks to Keen again, and thanks to Dave, who's not here. But this will be available as a live recording soon. I'll email everybody, and those who didn't attend, I'll email them as well. And yeah, thank you very much to everybody.
Thanks for having me, Fabio.
Thanks, guys.
Bye, everybody. Bye-bye.